Hi everyone. We're going to learn about the atomic model now. So we talked about the historical different models as we went through. We know that today we use the quantum model. That is our current model. So now we're just going to talk about some vocabulary, and then we're going to talk about the different symbols in the periodic table. Okay. So you can fill these into your chart here. So subatomic particles. The first one we're going to look at is protons. So you can write that into your chart, protons. The symbol in charge is going to be P+. The mass is going to be 1 AMU. Now AMU stands for atomic mass unit. So you can write that down somewhere. And the location of the protons is inside of the nucleus. So these are our positively charged subatomic particles, and we talked about those last class. Now, the next ones that we're going to look at, these are going to be our neutrons. So neutrons, you're going to write these into your chart as well in the second line. Neutrons. Symbol for neutrons is going to be lowercase n. Again, the mass is going to be 1 atomic mass unit. So they weigh the same as the protons. And they are also found inside the nucleus. Now, they do not have a charge, so they are neutral. So there's no charge on the neutrons. And our third type of particle, you probably remember it from yesterday, these are the negatively charged particles, and they are called... Right, electrons. So electrons, the symbol for those is going to be a lowercase e with a little negative sign. So you're going to write this stuff inside that table at the top of your page there. Mass, this should say negligible. So what that means is it's very small. You can write very small here. So such a tiny mass that we don't really even define it. And where those are located are in clouds that are going to be around the nucleus, okay? So that's the location of those. Now, analogy of an atom. So an analogy is when you compare something to something else. Now, this is a picture of Skydome. Now, does anyone know where Skydome is? Yeah, some of you probably do. This is in Toronto. Has anyone been to Toronto? Some of you definitely have. My sister lives there, so I try to go every couple of years to see her. We did go to a Blue Jays game, which is a baseball game, a couple of years ago, and it was a lot of fun at Skydome. So the analogy of an atom, and you can also think of the MTS Center, because most of us here have at some time gone to the MTS Center in Winnipeg. So this would be downtown Winnipeg. So the analogy of the atom, you would think of the atom itself as being as big as the Skydome, so as big as the MTS Center, so just huge, okay? Now, the nucleus is about the size of a baseball inside of that. So you can write this part down, baseball. So think about how big the baseball is as compared to this whole giant space, right? So very, very small. So that's how small the nucleus is in an atom as compared to the empty space around it. The protons and neutrons, you could think about those as being equal to marbles inside the baseball. So again, even smaller. And then electrons are so tiny that we can think of those as a single mosquito buzzing around the stadium or the arena. So if you're think about yourself in the MTS Center, the nucleus of an atom would be like, well, let's say a hockey puck there. And then say there was a little mosquito in the stand. Those would be like our electrons floating around. So the point of this is for you to recognize that the nucleus is very, very small and the electrons are really, really small as compared to the size of an atom. So an atom is in fact mostly empty space. Now, we've got elements. So elements are arranged on what's known as the periodic table. So an element is a pure substance that cannot be broken down into simpler substances, and they are found on the periodic. They're organized into a chart on the periodic table. Now you're going to have a couple fill-in-the-blank notes to put here. So symbols are used to represent the elements. So we don't have enough space to write the whole thing out, so we just use symbols. If one letter, the letter is always a capital, okay? So it's always going to be a capital. If two letters are used, the first letter is always capitalized, and the second letter is always lowercase. So the ones that I'm underlining here in red are the words that you need to put into your notes. So in this course, you are going to be responsible for knowing at least the first 20 elements on the periodic table, and we have about 10 more to and their symbols. So you got to memorize these. And when you come to class next, we'll play some bingo with the elements, and which is pretty fun. And we'll see how you do at memorizing them. So we're going to write down the ones that you need here. So looking at this element name, so we're going to start out with number 1. So if you look at your periodic table, the first element listed there is hydrogen. The element symbol is H. Now, some of the elements had original names, and so hydrogen didn't. It's always been hydrogen. So if it has an original name, I'll write it in there. So hydrogen. Helium is going to be our next one. Symbol capital H, lowercase e. Now, here's where some people, their handwriting can get them into trouble. Some people write things like this. They write their lowercase e as a cat. Hold on, that's a little, just a minute here. Let me redo that. Whoops. Okay, so they would write it as capital H, and then their little e, they would just write smaller, but as a capital, you can't do that in this unit. So that would be incorrect by chemistry standards. So you can't do that. You have to write a lowercase letter there, so try to get used to that. Third one is going to be lithium. So lithium is going to be Li is the symbol. Beryllium is our next one. And that's Be. Boron is our next one, which is just capital B. Carbon, you probably know. Yeah, capital C. Nitrogen is capital N. Oxygen, capital O. Fluorine is capital F. And then neon, we've got our neon signs are full of neon gas. This is capital N, lowercase e. Now here's our first one with an original name. So sodium. And normally you can tell that they have an original name because the symbol doesn't make sense. So the symbol for sodium is Na. So why would we call sodium Na when it should feel like it should be with an S, right? It's because sodium used to be called natrium. So that's Natrium. So that's where the symbol Na came from. Next we've got magnesium. And that's Mg. After that, we've got aluminum, and if you were British, you would call it aluminium. So aluminum, Al. And then silicon is Si. Phosphorus is the letter P. Sulfur is the letter S. Chlorine is Cl. Argon is Ar. Potassium is K. Now right away you should say, oh, I bet potassium has an original name. That's a weird symbol. And it does. It used to be called calcium. And then we've got calcium is Ca. So those are the first 20. So those are the ones you're responsible for knowing, but we're going to add some more because 20 isn't enough. You need some more. These ones are too easy. Yeah, so looking at these, we're going to add in some of the more common ones. So for example, silver. We all know silver. We experience that in our lives. The symbol is Ag. So again, yeah, it's got an original name and it's called argentum. So argentum. Now the next one is my absolute favorite, lead. So lead has the symbol Pb. So why would it be called Pb? The original name, plumbum. Isn't that great? Plumbum, best name ever. Next we've got gold. The symbol for gold is Au, and aurum is the name, the original name, aurum. Next we've got iron. Iron is Fe, and that was because it used to be called ferrum. So ferrum. After that, we've got nickel. My name is Nicole, and my grandfather used to call me his little nickel. Nickel, Ni. After that, we've got copper. Copper is Cu. Again, we think it should be Co. It's Co, which tells us cuprous was the original name, cuprous. Zinc is next. So we've got Zn as our symbol. Iodine is next, capital I. Tin is Sn, and it used to be called stannum. And then this one's also one of my favorite. I'm going to go up here. This one's called, tungsten. But it's got the symbol W because it used to be called wolfram. I like that name, wolfram. Wolfram. Next, we've got mercury. Used to be in for thermometers. Some of you might have some thermometers still in your house with mercury in it. Symbol Hg, and the name used to be hydrargyrum. So oops, I'm going to write it down here because I'm running out of space. Hydrargyrum. That's kind of a cool one too. And the last element that I expect you to memorize is uranium. And that is a big capital U. So these are all symbols that you are expected to memorize the symbols for. You should be able to spell them reasonably close, okay? And we will do quizzes on this. So, but we're going to use them for a little bit, and I think you'll probably get to learn them fairly quickly. Okay, so that's it for today. So the assignment that you had was, I think I just gave you some word searches, basically. So I want you to spend some time doing those word searches and a crossword puzzle. And I also want you to spend some time trying to memorize these symbols, because we're going to play a game with them, in which case, in the game, you're not going to be allowed to use your periodic table. So spend some time quizzing yourself. Lots of kids, sometimes they like making flashcards for them. Do whatever you need to do. Okay, thanks, guys.